Vermont is a New England state in the northeastern United States. Forests cover approximately 75% of its total land area. Vermont is the leading producer of maple syrup in the United States. Lake Champlain forms half of Vermont's western border, which it shares with the state of New York. The Green Mountains are within the state. Vermont is bordered by Massachusetts to the south, New Hampshire to the east across the Connecticut River, New York to the west, and the Canadian province of Quebec to the north. The state capital is Montpelier with a population of 7,855, making it the least populous state capital in the country. Vermont's most populous city is Burlington, with a 2013 population of 42,284, which makes it the least populous city in the United States to be the largest city within a state. Burlington's metropolitan area has a population of 214,796. Vermont is one of the most racially homogeneous states, 94.3% of its population identified as white in 2010. Vermont is the sixth smallest in area and the second least populous of the 50 United States. It is the only New England state not bordering the Atlantic Ocean. Originally inhabited by two major Native American tribes, much of the territory that is now Vermont was claimed by France during its early colonial period. France ceded the territory to the Kingdom of Great Britain after being defeated in 1763 in the 7 Years' War. For many years, the nearby colonies, especially New Hampshire and New York, disputed control of the area. Settlers who held land titles granted by these colonies were opposed by the Green Mountain Boys militia, which eventually prevailed in creating an independent state, the Vermont Republic. Founded in 1777 during the Revolutionary War, the Republic lasted for 14 years. Aside from the 13 colonies, Vermont is one of only 4 U.S. states that was previously a sovereign state. In 1791, Vermont joined the United States as the 14th state, the first in addition to the original 13 colonies. Vermont was the first state to partially abolish slavery while still independent and played an important geographical role in the Underground Railroad, which helped American slaves escape to Canada. Geography. Vermont is located in the New England region in the eastern United States and comprises 9,614 square miles, making it the 45th largest state. It is the only state that does not have any buildings taller than 124 feet. Land comprises 9,250 square miles and water comprises 365 square miles, making it the 43rd largest in land area and the 47th in water area. In total area, it is larger than El Salvador and smaller than Haiti. The west bank of the Connecticut River marks the eastern border of the state. 41% of Vermont's land area is a part of the Connecticut River's watershed. Lake Champlain, the major lake in Vermont, is the sixth largest body of fresh water in the United States and separates Vermont from New York in the northwest portion of the state. From north to south, Vermont is 159 miles long. Its greatest width, from east to west, is 89 miles at the Canadian border. The narrowest width is 37 miles at the Massachusetts line. The width averages 60.5 miles. The state's geographic center is approximately 3 miles east of Roxbury, in Washington County. There are 15 U.S. federal border crossings between Vermont and Canada. The origin of the name of Vermont is uncertain, but likely comes from the French les vэрîments, meaning the Green Mountains. Thomas Young introduced it in 1777. Some authorities say that the mountains were called green because they were more forested than the higher White Mountains of New Hampshire and Adirondacks of New York. Others say that the predominance of mica quartz chlorite schist, a green-hued metamorphosed shale, is the reason. The Green Mountain Range forms a north-south spine running most of the length of the state, slightly west of its center. In the southwest portion of the state are the Taconic Mountains. The Granitic Mountains are in the northeast. In the northwest, near Lake Champlain, is the fertile Champlain Valley. In the south of the valley is Lake vərઃmɒnt. Several mountains have timberlines with delicate year-round alpine ecosystems, including Mount Mansfield, the highest mountain in the state, Killington Peak, the second highest, Camel's Hump, the state's third highest, and Mount Abraham, the fifth highest peak. Areas in Vermont administered by the National Park Service include the Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller National Historical Park and the Appalachian National Scenic Trail. Cities: Vermont has 9 incorporated cities, listed by population. The most populated city in Vermont by city population is Burlington, which is also the most populated metropolitan area in Vermont with a population of 214,796 as of 2013. Largest towns: although these towns are large enough to be considered cities, they are not incorporated as such. Climate: the annual mean temperature for the state is 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Vermont has a humid continental climate, with muddy springs, in general a mild early summer, hot Augusts. It has colorful autumns. Vermont's hills reveal red, orange, and gold foliage as cold weather approaches. Winters are colder at higher elevations. It has a Köppen climate classification of the FB, similar to Minsk, Stockholm, and Fargo. The rural northeastern section often averages 10 degrees Fahrenheit colder than the southern areas of the state during winter. The annual snowfall averages between 60 and 100 inches depending on elevation. Vermont is the 7th coldest state in the country. In winter, until typical El Niño conditions, Vermont's winters are too cold to snow. The air is too cold to contain sufficient moisture to prompt precipitation. The highest recorded temperature was 105 degrees Fahrenheit at Vernon on July 4, 1911. The lowest recorded temperature was -50 degrees Fahrenheit at Bloomfield on December 30, 1933. This is the lowest temperature recorded in New England in 2009. The agricultural growing season ranges from 120 to 180 days. The USDA plant hardiness zones for the state range between Zone 3B in the Northeast Kingdom and northern part of the state and Zone 5B in the southern part of the state. The state receives between 2,000 and 2,400 hours of sunshine annually. Geology: there are 5 distinct physiographic regions of Vermont, categorized by geological and physical attributes. They are the Northeastern Highlands, the Green Mountains, the Taconic Mountains, the Champlain Lowlands, and the Vermont Piedmont. About 500 million years ago, Vermont was part of Laurentia, and located in the tropics. The central and southern Green Mountain Range include the oldest rocks in Vermont, formed about 1 billion years ago during the first mountain building period. Subsequently, about 400 million years ago, the second mountain building period created Green Mountain peaks that were 15,000–20,000 feet tall, 3 to 4 times their current height and comparable to the Himalayas. The geological pressures that created those peaks remain evident as the Champlain Thrust, running north-south to the west of the mountains. It is an example of geological fault thrusting where bedrock is pushed over the newer rock formation. As a result of tectonic formation, Vermont east of the Green Mountains tends to be formed from rocks produced in the Silurian and Devonian periods. Western Vermont mainly from the older Precambrian and Cambrian material. Several large deposits within the state contain granite. Some buildings in Germany, Hong Kong and Abu Dhabi are constructed almost primarily of Vermont granite. Rock of Ages quarries: 2 kinds of granite in Vermont, Bagray and Bethel White. The remains of the Chazy Formation can be observed in Isle La Motte. It was one of the first tropical reefs. It is the site of the limestone Fisk Quarry, which contains a collection of ancient marine fossils such as stromatophoroids that date back to 200 million years ago. It is believed that at one point, Vermont was connected to Africa, and the fossils found in the rock formations found on the coasts in both Africa and America are further evidence of the Pangaea theory. In the past 4 centuries, Vermont has experienced a few earthquakes, rarely centered under Vermont, the highest being a Richter magnitude scale 6.0 in 1952. Fauna: the state contains 41 species of reptiles and amphibians, 89 species of fish, of which 12 are non-native, 193 species of breeding birds, 58 species of mammals, more than 15,000 insect species, and 2,000 higher plant species, plus fungi, algae, and 75 different types of natural communities. The Vermont contains 1 species of venomous snake, the eastern timber rattlesnake, which is confined to a few acres in western Rutland County. By the mid-19th century, wild turkeys were exterminated in the state through overhunting and destruction of habitat. 16 were reintroduced in 1969 and had grown to an estimated flock of 45,000 in 2009. In 2013, hunters killed 6,968 of these. Since 1970, reduction of farmland has resulted in reduced environment for and reduced numbers of various shrubland birds, including the American woodcock, brown thrasher, eastern towhee, willow flycatcher, golden-winged warbler, blue-winged warbler, field sparrow, and Baltimore oriole. DDT destroyed the eggshells of ospreys, which resulted in the disappearance from the state. This species began reviving in 1998. As of 2010, they were no longer endangered in the state. White nose syndrome killed an estimated 2/3 of all cave-wintering bats in the state from 2008 to 2010. The New England cottontail disappeared from the state in the early 1970s, outcompeted by the eastern cottontail rabbit, imported in the 1800s for hunting, and which is better able to detect predators. Out of a total of 33 species of bumblebee, there were 19 or 20 in the state in 2013. Bombus terricola, although once common in Vermont, has not been seen in most of its range since 1999 and is now absent from Vermont. For honeybees, colony collapse disorder has affected bee population in the state, as elsewhere. Invasive species included the Asian spotted-winged Drosophila, which started damaging berry crops in 2012. Vermont was the initial point of invasion in New England. Since 2010, the Vermont Department of Health has worked with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to conduct blood serum surveys of the state's deer and moose populations. Tests for eastern equine encephalitis virus antibodies were positive in moose or deer in each of Vermont's counties. In 2012, 12% of deer and 2.4% of moose tested positive. Flora: Vermont is in the temperate broadleaf and mixed forests biome. Much of the state, in particular the Green Mountains, is covered by the conifers and northern hardwoods of the New England Acadian forests. The western border with New York and the area around Lake Champlain lies within the eastern Great Lakes lowland forests. The southwest corner of the state and parts of the Connecticut River are covered by northeastern coastal forests of mixed oak. Invasive wild honeysuckle has been deemed a threat to the state's forests, native species of plants, and wildlife. Many of Vermont's rivers, including the Winooski River, have been subjected to man-made barriers to prevent flooding. Climate change appears to be affecting the maple sugar industry. Sugar maples have been subject to stress by acid rain, Asian longhorn beetles, pear thrips, and, in 2011, an excessive deer herd that is forced to eat bark in the winter. These maples need a certain amount of cold to produce sap for maple syrup. The time to tap these trees has shrunk to 1 week in some years. The tree may be replaced by the more aggressive Norway maples, in effect forcing the sugar maples to migrate north to Canada.